Your life is
just about 7 a.m., and you are now invited to listen to The Morning Watch with Mr. Stokeley Marshall. But before we go into that, let me just remind you or let you know that The Morning Watch is sponsored by Bashco Trading Company.
Well, if you want buy appliances for your home with the quality high and the price low, get it on a Bashco. Get it on a Bashco. Bashco. The everything where you need. Bashco. Quality service guaranteed on a Bashco. Get it on a Bashco. Gives you more. Yeah, Bashco. Furniture for your house, and everything for your kitchen, your cups and more at Bashco. The store that gives you more. Bashco.
Listeners to Love 101 FM are advised that the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Welcome to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. And the Morning Watch is, of course, here on Love 101 FM, the number one gospel station in Jamaica. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org. And if you are overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you are in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also check us out on Love 101 FM, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, industrial relations, where there is no right to strike. And in the second watch, what happens if you die without a will? In our social media question, we ask, what comes to mind when you think about writing your will? Share your responses on our Facebook or YouTube Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes too. 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share a conversation in the program, but first, as I quote.
This is an integrity quote, and it says, "Being kind is never wasted."
Jakar, why is it that some of these I quotes, which seem to be so profound, don't seem to have an author?
Exactly. I'm not seeing who it's from. I guess it's just
or they're anonymous.
Yeah, right.
Being kind is never wasted indeed. Jakar, good morning. How are you doing, man?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Doing well. Yes. Yes, all is well.
Excellent. And of course, looking forward to a good program today. Listeners, the main watch will be back after this break.
Well, if you want buy appliances for your home with the quality high and the price low, get it on a Bashco. Get it on a Bashco. Bashco. The everything where you need. Bashco. Quality service guaranteed on a Bashco. Get it on a store that gives you more. Yeah, Bashco. Furniture for your house, and everything for your kitchen, your cups and more at Bashco. The store that gives you more. Bashco.
With your Visa debit card in hand, you can do it all. Pay for all your expenses and win amazing rewards like a US $7,000 home makeover, a trip for two to any Copa Airlines destination, plus US $1,000 or a staycation for two at Sandals Resorts, plus bi-weekly prizes of air fryers, gas, or supermarket vouchers. Every use of your Visa debit card gets you closer to winning. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming, and Lotteries Act.
You work hard to make Jamaica a first-class destination. Isn't it time you receive the 5-star benefits? Retire smarter with the Tourism Workers Pension Scheme, a portable plan that also provides your family with financial security in case of your untimely death. It's easy, affordable, and accessible online. Retire and relax with the Tourism Workers Pension Scheme. Visit twps.myguardiangroup.com or call 876-927-4105. Guardian Life. Live secure. Live easy.
Jamaica, let us arrive alive. We know everyone has somewhere to be or someone to see. Whether you're going on a trip, headed to a party, running errands, getting gifts, or visiting family and friends. Arrive alive. Slow down. There's no rush. Look out for yourself and others. Don't let your life be a statistic. Too many Jamaicans are dying on our roads. So take time on the road. Arrive alive.
A message from the Office of the Prime Minister.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Thanks for staying with us. Now, from time to time, you'll hear about various groups of workers defying an order of the Industrial Disputes Tribunal. And do these workers defy these orders to their detriment? What are the powers of the IDT, and how do groups which are striking, quote unquote, get away with their defiance? What are the guidelines in relation to the IDT? What are the rights of workers? Is there even a right to strike, whether in the Constitution or in any other law in Jamaica? We have online today Emile, Leiba, attorney at law who practices employment law, and we have St. Patrice Ennis, General Secretary of UTASP. Gentlemen, good morning to you both. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Stokeley. I'm fine, thanks. And you?
I am well. Are we hearing St. Patrice Ennis? Mr. Ennis?
Good morning. The policy rep now with the company now.
Ennis, good morning, sir. Well known and highly respected, Mr. Ennis. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, good morning.
I hope we're not having a challenge. I hope you're not having a challenge with your audio, Mr. Ennis. Getting right into it, gentlemen. What determines the right to strike, if there is even such a right? Starting with you, Mr. Ennis. Mr. Ennis?
Well, yes, yes. Are you hearing me? Hello?
Yes, I am asking what determines the right to strike, if there is even such a right. And forgive me, sir. UTASP, meaning the Union of Technical, Administrative and Supervisory Personnel, UTASP. Mr. Ennis, would you like to assist us with that question?
Right. Okay. Yes. No, we here, and I think Brother Emile would agree with me. We here, we don't have. There's nothing in our legislation that I'm aware of that stipulates that there's a right to strike. But at the same time, there is nothing that I'm aware of also that says that we are prohibited from striking. So
that's an interesting one, Mr. Ennis. There's nothing in the law that you're aware of that says there's a right to strike, but you're not aware of anything that says you can't. Very interesting. Continue, Mr. Ennis.
Right. That prohibits us from taking industrial action, and so that industrial action, strike, or other forms of withdrawing, and I use the term industrial action because it means, strike is one form. But there are the other forms of either withdrawing or reducing your services, whether it is a go slow, a sit-in, or
everyone becomes sick on the same day.
Well, I didn't say that's also another form which is sometimes employed, and as on the part of the employer, they can have something like a lockout, where they can just close their gates and so on. Right. So Mr.
Ennis, Yes, and only because of time, sir. The IDT, the Industrial Disputes Tribunal, we hear about it all the time. And we hear about various workers defying back to work orders issued by the IDT. What is the IDT? Or what is the role of the IDT?
Well, the IDT is what we generally refer to as a quasi-judicial body. It's a tribunal, the Industrial Disputes Tribunal. That's what the term means. It is made up of a panel in the tribunal is normally made up of an employer worker representative and somebody who is appointed from the government side. That is generally how the panel.
And a quick one before we bring in Mr. Leiba. It appears as if, to many persons, that every time the IDT issues a back to work order, it's clearly being done to facilitate, the continuance of working and so on. But has the IDT ever issued an order that says you don't have to go back to work, Mr. Ennis, to your recollection or knowledge?
Well, I don't think it would be necessary for the IDT to issue suggesting that to go back to work. If that's his position, it would just probably remain silent. Normally, when there is an industrial action in an essential service, that's oftentimes when the government would go to the tribunal seeking a back to work order. The last one, I think that we are aware of.
Has the IDT ever rejected a back to work order? Have they ever rejected a request to issue a back to work order? That's the question I'm really asking. To your knowledge.
I'm not aware of that.
Hold the thought there 1 second, Mr. Ennis. Hold the thought there 1 second. Bringing in counsel Emile Leiba, employment lawyer. Sir, good morning again.
Good morning, Stokeley.
Would you like to just assist the listeners in terms of some of the powers of the IDT, and how do you think some persons view the role of the IDT? And if you want, can you make a distinction between would you like to make a distinction between how they deal with what are termed essential service workers and then other categories of workers? Mr. Leiba.
Right. Yes, thanks, Stokeley. Now, in terms of the powers of the IDT, most people, I think, would be familiar with them making awards where a worker has been unjustifiably dismissed based on their determination and things like that. Those are the things that tend to make their headlines. But the IDT, of course, also has a significant role in resolving other forms of industrial disputes that are not limited to issues of dismissal. Okay. Now, the IDT, prior to 2010, March 2010 was, to me, primarily focused on disputes with unionized environments. And since the amendment to the law to expand the definition of an industrial dispute, it has encompassed a lot of what I call individual disputes.
Excellent.
Now, in a context where workers and their employer are, in a sense, not getting along on a particular issue, it may involve things like the pay, the terms, the conditions of employment, and so on. That, many times the employer, doesn't want to or is unwilling to budge from their position, and the workers are not willing to budge from their position. And in that context, you have a dispute that, they're locked and they can't move. So the IDT role there is to help them to move from that locked position and then give a determination for one side or the other or somewhere in between. While they're doing that, the concept is that...
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The concept, yes. Yeah, I'm saying while they're resolving dispute, the concept is that the workers should not be holding a knife to the throat of the employer and letting their business go down the drain. Particularly, for example, in somewhere like a factory setting, we are shutting down some factories, particularly major processing plants and so on. It's not something like flicking a switch off and flicking a switch back on. You know, there's shutdown processes and there's restart processes, and it can involve many millions of dollars. And so the concept would be that continue to work, and then let us see if we can resolve this matter, perhaps in your favor. You know, now, and in an essential service, now, we're talking about a service that is for the benefit of the country. Now, we're not even talking about a private employer. We're talking about a service that all of us as Jamaicans will rely on. And, you know, in order
Mr.
for...
Leiba, we are already upon a break. I'm going to ask you just hold that thought for 1 second. Listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
Follow Grey Sardine, follow the better flavor. Grey Sardine with the chef and the beginner. Follow the one with pepper, that are the winner. Shop on supermarkets, everybody sell it. Do all of them nice. Pass the part, make push it.
Grey Sardines, follow the better flavor. Entrepreneurs, now you've got more support in your corner. Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center, where entrepreneurs benefit from free training in business management, financial support and guidance from pros, as well as research capabilities. Sagicor Bank, in partnership with the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, brings you this first center of its kind for small entrepreneurs to develop and grow. Let's help you take your business to the next level of success. Contact Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center today. WhatsApp 876-997-3745.
JCDC, the heartbeat of Jamaica's culture, is celebrating 60 years of epicness. You have spoken and we have listened. The closing date is now extended to April 14, 2023 for the Miss Jamaica Festival Queen, Jamaica Festival Song, and the Jamaica Gospel Star competitions. Submit your entries online at jcdc.gov.jm or any JCDC parish office island-wide. Hurry, enter now and be a part of history.
How many years we had to do this and never yet fail, yo? You me bun gonna lead. You get this bun one time, you gon' come back for more. Trust me, that bun is sweet. When you say yummy, you say bun, everybody wants some. Yummy bun, me say that the best, yes. Yummy, you say bun, everybody wants some. Yummy bun, everybody wants some.
When it comes to bun, Yummy Bun has been the number one choice for years. Undoubtedly the best in value and taste. Bite
Yummy
after
bun,
bite.
everybody wants some.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. We are in the first watch, or the main watch, and the topic is industrial relations, where there is no right to strike. Our guests are Attorney at Law Emile Leiba and General Secretary of UTASP, St. Patrice Ennis. Mr. Leiba, just before the break, you're making a point and you were beginning to look at the situation of industrial relations for essential service workers. Go ahead, Mr. Leiba.
So the Labor Relations and Industrial Disputes Act lists in what they call the first schedule to the Act services which would be said to be essential: water services, electricity, health, hospital, sanitary, firefighting, correctional, and overseas telecom, and matters to do with ships. So once you fall within those areas,
that's quite a list.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And so these are the services that are essential to our day-to-day living and living comfortably and safely as Jamaicans. And
so what is the law really saying there, Mr. Leiba? Is the law saying that they can't take industrial action? What exactly is it saying, or how is it interpreted?
Well, certainly my understanding is that no, they can't take industrial action, because if it is that you have that
they can't do so lawfully. They can't do so lawfully.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
Very interesting. So, in a nutshell, Mr. Leiba, if you could assist the listeners in terms of non-essential service workers, what are the forms of lawful industrial action? And in the case of essential service workers, what are their options? Go ahead, Mr. Leiba.
Well, for non-essential, for want of a better phrase,
Yes, yes.
you would normally, if they're in a unionized environment, so industrial action usually takes place in the context of a unionized environment where they're represented by the union. The union is required to give notice of the intended industrial action.
Okay.
And so there is a process. So the Act does recognize and, in fact, speaks to strike, for example, be falling under the definition of an industrial action. So it includes a lockout, strike, and any other conduct, with an intention in contemplation of furtherance of an industrial dispute. So there is a process that should be followed in a unionized environment before industrial action is taken.
What if someone is not unionized? Any comments there, sir? What if someone is not unionized and they are not an essential service worker?
Well,
no
organized. Pardon me? Repeat that one.
They have to just sort of maybe have a discussion with their employer. What do they do? What are their options?
Well, an industrial dispute can exist outside of a unionized environment.
Yeah.
But usually the concept is that strike action is an organized action by labor.
Yeah.
Meaning that so it's not 1, 2, 3 persons. Or I think we've had that firefighter who climbs up in half a tree and protests. That he is not really he may have an individual dispute, but usually the strike action is an organized action by labor to restrict work.
And so I know I'm jumping in here, Mr. Leiba. What it essentially for interesting I said essentially for the essential service workers who have issues with their employer, that a non-essential service worker could take certain industrial action in relation to an essential service worker. They really have no option. They have to just sort of maybe have a discussion with their employer. They can't take industrial action.
Well, the reality on the ground is that for essential services, they just go and stick outs and things like that.
Well, let's bring back in Mr. Ennis here.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Unless you were through, I'll bring back in Mr. Ennis. Unless you're through, Mr. Leiba.
No, just adding to the list, go slow, work to rule. There are things that, are questionable as to whether they fall under, industrial action. But I'm sure Mr. Ennis can better expand on that list.
Mr. Ennis, any comments, sir, in terms of essential service workers, essential service employees, and they have serious grievances, but the law indicates that they can't lawfully take industrial action because they're essential service workers. Any comments on that, Mr. Ennis? What is it? We see what workers have been doing, but would you like to comment in light of the strictures of the law versus the reality many times on the ground, Mr. Ennis?
Well, yes. Again,
bearing in mind that you have no right to strike per se, although some of the language that Mr. Leiba used, he was seeming to be quoting from something, and he indicated including strike. But go ahead, Mr. Ennis.
Right. While I said that the right to strike is not enshrined in law, at the same time, it's not enshrined in law that workers are prohibited from striking. And hence, it is something that has been a part of used as part of the work armory in terms of in furtherance of disputes.
Let me just ask you this question, Mr. Ennis, because I don't know if I'm sensing a little bit of tiptoeing in terms of this matter of the word strike? Is it that the unions are not interested in pursuing a right to strike as a right in whether our constitution or in any other law? You're quite satisfied with the remedies you have at the moment? What really is the position, or you just haven't had a current discussion on the matter? Because when the current Charter of Rights was put together, there clearly is no right to strike in there, and it's not seen where there was any push to have it in there. What is the current position of the unions in Jamaica? Well, certainly for UTASP.
Well, I don't think that is at the top of our agenda. Once there is nothing prohibiting us and embarking on such course of action, there are myriads of other issues that the workers.
So in other words, since you're sort of getting along anyway, and we do have strikes from time to time, you seem to be quite satisfied with that. So you're indicating that you're saying the law doesn't stop persons from striking per se, and so persons strike nevertheless. So what if you run into a wall where your workers are striking and you are reminded that there is no right to strike in law? What do you all do?
Well, we remind them that there's nothing in law to prevent us from. Mr. Leiba was indicating earlier, just prior.
Yeah.
The law in case of certain entities that they describe as essential services and so on. They lay out is how do you the processes, as he puts it, that you must take, the steps that you must take before you embark on such course of action.
Yeah. And what is the environment right now between workers and managers, workers and owners of enterprises? Generally speaking, are you fine? And this includes the government, by the way, because the government is quite a large employer of labor in the island. So are you having a sort of relatively harmonious environment where there is open dialogue, or are you hitting upon walls where you're not getting through to the management? Generally speaking, and without pointing to any specific or isolated cases.
Well, there's a distinct difference in central government and in the private sector.
Really? What's the difference?
Well, in terms of unionizing workers in central government, we are not required to really have a poll to unionize workers as it's required in central government. I mean, in the private sector and sometimes in the public bodies. You know, civil servants are largely what obtains is that you largely just fill out the union form, and the government generally recognizes the union that demonstrates that it represents the majority of a particular category of workers, and that has been something that has traditionally been done. Within the private sector, we are required, and other public bodies. And when I say public bodies, I'm talking like parastatal entities, whether it's the NWC, Port Authority, NHD, UDC, and so on. Where we generally have to conduct a poll, not so hostile, but in the private sector, it can be quite hostile, as you may see what is happening in the security guard industry, where there's some difficulty in unionizing workers in those entities, the BPOs, the hotel industry, and so on, where workers there's a general fear, and other entities, general fear of the workers that they may be victimized if they are to express an interest in being unionized, and which does not necessarily obtain in central government or public sector. And I try to make the distinction in the public sector between parastatals, agencies, and central government. So,
I know you. Well, let me just ask the question directly. It is sometimes felt, Mr. Ennis, that some unionized persons in organizations, whether public or private, they become very consumed with pursuing their rights, as they should be, to the point where they might be seen as a little bit obstructionist. They might be seen as obstructionists. Any comments on that, Mr. Ennis?
No. Well. In entity, there is that viewpoint, which is I would term somewhat, which I term an anachronistic one. But enlightened employers recognize that there will be issues between workers and management.
Okay.
And that the union and a unionized environment do assist in terms of bringing issues to the fore.
And it definitely can. Yes, we agree. Yes.
Yes, and if you look around Jamaica in terms of the entities that are generally employed, because it's not only workers that have union, employers have union too.
Very true. But that might have to be another discussion because we are now totally out of time. I want to thank you, Mr. Saint Patrice Ennis, and thank you as well, Council Emile Leiba, for being with us this morning. We are totally out of time. Thank you for your time and for your thoughts, gentlemen. You have really shed some light on this very interesting area. Listeners, please stay with us. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
Entrepreneurs, now you've got more support in your corner. Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center, where entrepreneurs benefit from free training in business management, financial support and guidance from pros, as well as research capabilities. Sagicor Bank, in partnership with the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, brings you this first center of its kind for small entrepreneurs to develop and grow. Let's help you take your business to the next level of success. Contact Sagicor Bank Business Resource Center today. WhatsApp 876-997-3745.
The #1 digital sales and marketing conference will be here in Jamaica. SalesCon 360. This is your opportunity to network with leading marketers, explore insights and strategies on the future of digital marketing and sales. Join us at the Jamaica Pegasus, May 4 to 5, featuring top speakers and marketers from around the world. The future of marketing and sales is here. Register now at salescon360.com or call 876-438-1135. Sponsored by iPrint Digital, Creative Brands and Concepts, Trendy Media, and the Love 101.
The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
In the coming fiscal year, the government will be undertaking several major infrastructural projects across the island. The National Security Council discussed this specific type of threat, and we have tasked the JCF and MOCA to establish special security operations around these projects to ensure that our major infrastructure projects are not hijacked by criminals seeking to illicitly benefit from public resources through extortion or holding up work schedules.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Breast cancer is real. Cervical cancer is real. Heart attack and stroke are real. And so are pregnancy complications. As a woman, if you are hit with one of these critical illnesses or complications, your whole life can be turned upside down. Total Woman Insurance Plan gives you real insurance protection for up to 15 major critical illnesses, life insurance, and other benefits, including free cancer screening. Get serious about your coverage. Get real protection with Total Woman Insurance Plan from Sagicor Life.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall, and thanks for staying with us. Let's take a look now at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. And we turn to the Gleaner. Prince Harry will attend father's coronation. Meghan won't. We turn to the Jamaica Observer. This story is written by Jason Cross of the Observer. Dr. Dawes pronounces popular medical doctor seeking to be the People's National Party's candidate for St. Catherine Southeastern in the general election due 2025 on Tuesday during the launch of his political bid pronounced dead campaign of his rival, Alaric Campbell. And we now turn to Loop Jamaica News. And the story in Loop Jamaica News refers to illegal migration threatening strength of Jamaican passport. Illegal migration threatening strength of Jamaican passport. Johnson Smith, referring to our foreign minister, warns countrymen to stop the risky practice. Those and many other stories in our various news sources. Coming up next, we'll read for you some of the feedback from our Facebook and WhatsApp question, which is, what comes to mind when you think about writing your will? If you haven't done so yet, leave a comment on our Facebook or YouTube, Love 101 FM Jamaica Live, and also WhatsApp comments and voice notes to 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll be right back.
Fellowship Fridays with Shabani Blair is a big deal. It's a really, really big deal.
Have you caught the excitement? Been a part of the engaging discussion? I laugh till your belly pop. It's a whole mood, good food. You're sure to walk away filled.
It's Fellowship Fridays with Shabani Blair, 5 p.m. to 11 p.m.
And youths, we may just link up virtually or in person for your youth fellowship.
The pulsating, dance-keeping, worship-filled music is a buzz.
Youth Zoom is a must as we highlight talented and high-striving youths. And don't miss
Come Back We Draw a Long Bench.
Woo-hoo! It's a great way to unwind after a long week.
Just listen or call in and participate. Either way, you are sure to be enlightened.
Fellowship Fridays with Shabani Blair.
Every Friday from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m.
It's all on the family station.
Love 101.
Love 101 invites you to listen to Encounter, presented by the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches, Thursdays at 10 p.m. Every first Thursday, listen for words of upliftment from the Lighthouse Assembly with Bishop Rowan Edwards. Every second Thursday at 10 p.m., listen for a word of encouragement from Wojis Ministries International. That's Women of God in Service with Reverend Dr. Elaine Richards. Every third Thursday, receive words of strength and power from Praise Deliverance Ministry with Senior Pastor Fitzroy Carr. And every fourth Thursday, the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches shares words of hope. For fifth Thursdays, it's words of inspiration from the New United Bible Way Church of God with Reverend Dr. Jasmine Brown. That's Encounter, presented by the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches every Thursday at 10 p.m. right here on the family station, Love 101.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Let's join Jakal now for how our friends in the social media landscape answer today's question. What comes to mind when you think about writing your will? Jakal, what responses have we gotten?
All right, so Edna from Montego Bay says, good morning. When I think of writing a will, I don't have anything to put in there, just living day by day by the grace of God. Marcia says, I think about making someone happy when I die and no fighting about who should get what. And Bridget Hunter says, thinking I'm going to die faster. And those are some of the responses I have here on WhatsApp.
Very interesting. Any others, or those are they?
No, those are they.
Okay, interesting. Well, we move right into the second watch on the topic. Have you made a will? What happens if you die and you did not make one? Have you thought about making a will? Are you afraid that if you make a will, it means that you are now, as it were, preempting your own death sooner than you thought it would have been? And well, let's go right into the discussion we have online this morning to help us to unravel some of these questions and other questions. Anthony Williams, attorney at law. Good morning, Mr. Williams.
Good morning, Stokeley, and to your listeners as well. Thanks for having me, my brother.
Great having you again. We have discussed this before, but there is always room to go back and look at this issue because it's not going to go away. What are some of the reasons for not writing a will or for writing a will to make sure you have that document? So you heard that two-pronged question. What are the reasons for not writing a will? Some people might say, I don't need to write one. And then what are the reasons that you really should write a will, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, well, first of all, I will state a number of reasons. They're in no particular order. But in the Bible, there's scriptural reference. In Genesis 27, Isaac told his son Esau, he said, "Come, let I bless you before I die." So what Isaac was actually doing was preparing his son Esau to be blessed in the future. He was thinking futuristically for Esau to benefit. And of course, we know the story of his father Jacob and his mother Rebecca overhearing the conversation and decide to connive,
to intervene,
and steal the birthright. So right away, you're seeing the benefits of estate planning. Now, when someone does not, when someone does not make their will, their estate will be automatically exposed or governed by the rules of intestacy. There is an act in Jamaica called the Interstate and Estate Property Charges Act, and that is an act that governs all persons who either refuse or fail or they neglect or they just simply say, I don't care, I don't wish to make a will. So the estate...
Pick up in, Mr. Williams. You seem to be indicating to listeners that, yes, you really should make a will. If you don't make a will, an act of parliament will have clauses in there or provisions in there rather that will determine what happens to your estate. So let's say you have a situation, or let's say you have a situation of someone passing away. There is a spouse and say 2 children. There's no will. What is likely to happen based on this?
Under the rules of intestacy, the formula created or provided in the statute is that if you die, you have a spouse, you have 2 children. As a matter of fact, let us say you have 5 children. Yes. So the formula is that the spouse will automatically get 50%.
Okay.
And the remaining 50% will be divided by the number of children. So if it is 2 children, it will be 50% divided by 2. If it is 5 children, it will be the 50% divided by 5. So each will get 10. Now, you have situations where you have, for example, adult children, and the relationship between the deceased and those children may have been one of bitterness and acrimony, and you may not wish or want to leave anything for that particular child or children. There is no rule or law or legislation that says that because you have children, especially when they're adult children, you must leave something for them. That's not so. So what you find is that you may have your estate distributing assets or benefits to someone who you just did not want to benefit. Okay? Now, another thing too is that when you don't make a will, you will have absolutely no control over the distribution of your estate. In other words, when you make the will, you have that power, you have that authority to decide who will get what, when will they get it, how much will they get, and you determine exactly what do they get. So you have that power, you have that control, you have that authority.
Understood.
The other thing
now,
it may not synchronize with your wishes. In other words, it may not distribute your estate according to how you want it. So the formula is applied, and that formula may be a formula that just doesn't accord, with your wishes, So that is another disadvantage. Yeah.
We're almost upon the break. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Yeah. Another thing too is that your spouse, especially persons who are married, and when there are children, especially children who are outside the marriage, yes, your spouse may be forced to sell the family home in order to pay a share.
Hold that thought, Mr. Williams, because we are now upon the break. Listeners, don't go anywhere at all. Please stay with us. We'll be right back on the Morning Watch.
Sardine for the chef and the beginner. Follow the one with pepper, that are the winner. Shop on supermarkets, everybody selling
sardines. Follow the better flavor.
The time is 7:45.
Breast cancer is real. Cervical cancer is real. Heart attack and stroke are real. And so are pregnancy complications. As a woman, if you are hit with one of these critical illnesses or complications, your whole life can be turned upside down. Total Woman Insurance Plan gives you real insurance protection for up to 15 major critical illnesses, life insurance, and other benefits, including free cancer screening. Get serious about your coverage. Get real protection with Total Woman Insurance Plan from Sagicor Life.
Well, if you want buy appliances for your home with the quality high and the price low, get it on a Bashco. Get it on a Bashco. 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 Be everything where you need. Bashco. Quality service guaranteed on a Bashco. Get it on a Bashco that gives you more. Yeah, Bashco. Furniture for your house, and everything for your kitchen, rocks, cups, and more at Bashco. The store that gives you more. Bashco.
Do you have a heart condition? Your care should be in the hands of our experienced cardiovascular team at Partners Interventional Center of Jamaica. We're one of the leading heart centers for angiogram, stenting, pacemakers, EP studies, and ablation therapy. PICJ has the expertise and latest technology to treat all your heart needs. Call 876-995-7425 or email info@pic-jm.com for appointments. PICJ, your partners for life.
Many of our brothers and sisters lose hope when diagnosed with HIV. Some lose their will to continue being a part of society. Others are despaired by the challenges of keeping up with their treatment. We understand. But remember, people with HIV live normal and progressive lives every day. You can too if you get back on track with your HIV treatment. Live for you, live for someone, live for something.
Get back on track, get back to life.
A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Stokeley Marshall. Thanks for staying with us. We are in the second watch, and the topic in the second watch is what happens if you die without a will. Our guest is Attorney at Law Anthony Williams. Mr. Williams, just before you continue, sir, I just wanted to add to something that you said for the benefit of the listeners, because persons are listening and they may have various questions. The relevant section of the Intestate Estates and Property Charges Act, I'm seeing here where it speaks to something called a table of distribution, sir, which I know you're very familiar with, under Section 4. And it says, for instance, upon the death of the relevant person who died intestate, the surviving spouse of the intestate shall take the personal chattels absolutely. These are things like furniture, etc. It speaks to $10,000 or a sum equal to 10% of the net value of the estate, and it continues. I won't get into the details of that right now. It speaks to interest in relation to a particular paragraph there. I won't get into that right now because it might be a little bit too long for the show. However, in terms of the residuary estate or the rest of it, it speaks if there is no child or other issue and no parent surviving the intestate, the spouse gets the whole of the residue. Yes. And it goes on to speak to subject to section 5, subsection 5 rather, which we don't have the time to go into today. It says if there is only one child of the intestate, the spouse gets 2/3 of the residue. And we go to section B, which is what you were indicating earlier on in terms of that example with 5 children or 2 children. If there is more than one child of the intestate, the spouse gets 1/2 of such residue, as you had indicated, Mr. Williams. And it goes on to say, if there is no child or other issue surviving the intestate, but a surviving parent or parents, as the case may be, 2/3 of the residue, that would be the spouse will be getting 2/3. And it goes on. I know the act goes on to talk about what happens if there's no spouse, no children, and it goes on to talk about siblings of the half blood and the full blood, and etc., etc., etc. I won't go into all that detail now. So, Mr. Williams, the person would really be losing control as to how their estate is distributed. The law would take over.
That is exactly the point. So the act sets out this chronological table. It sets out a formula. It sets out a calculation, and most importantly, too, it speaks about surviving parent. Now, there have been many cases, hundreds of cases, where someone died, no will, or there was a will, but it is invalid, right? One second for me. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so someone died, and there is a surviving parent, assuming that there are no children. And so you find that a mother-in-law or a father-in-law may benefit when you did not want them to benefit. But under the provisions of the Act, they will have to benefit. It is compulsory, it's mandatory. So you have no control. Another thing too is that when you make a will, you have that authority and power to name someone as your executor. Mm-hmm. And the executor is the person who will administer your estate, somebody who you decide of your own choice, of your own free will. And now, when you don't make the will, you have no control over your administrator. So your estate may be administered by someone who you didn't want, or someone who just have sheer incompetence. Now, if there are minor children as well, you're putting the estate at risk, because if you're under the age of 23, then the estate will be automatically be taken over by the Administrator General. And I can tell you that their hands are full. Their hands are full. And it will take years, a lot of time, for the estate to be administered.
Understood.
Another thing to very quickly is that it may leave your estate exposed to creditors and predators to meddle in the estate. So you don't want to leave your estate exposed to creditors and predators.
Yeah.
Also, it allows your executor to pursue a claim on your behalf, very quickly. So in the event a person owes you money, or the person may have died as a result of a motor vehicle accident, unfortunately, those can quickly get into the court. It often leads to a lot of unnecessary family disputes and quarrels and feuds about assets, who must get what, and there are misinterpretations of what the deceased said or did not say, or what he planned to do or did not plan to do. So the will would specifically set out in very clear terms, especially if it is drafted by a lawyer, who must get what, when, where, how. Also, the residue of an estate is very important. That is what we call the what left. That is not mentioned in the will. Not
specifically named or mentioned in the will. Yes, go ahead.
Correct. Now, those persons were of the opinion that by preparing their will, they're actually preparing for death. But nothing is wrong with that. There are only two things in life that is sure: death and taxes. So we have to face the reality. Right? We have to face the reality. It is appointed unto man once to die, but after death, the judgment. So we all will go. So if Isaac moons ago could have prepared his estate and did prepare his estate for his son, who are we
I'm going to ask a question that might appear to be a little bit on the controversial side, but hey, we are the Morning Watch. We do deal with controversy from time to time, all the time actually. Do you see a difference in terms of how we approach the making of wills in terms of ethnic differentiation? In other words, do persons of an African descent, are we less likely to want to make wills versus persons of another race, Caucasian, Asian, or you don't see any difference?
I really don't see a difference, really, but I find that the less educated ones are the ones that find themselves into trouble. And oftentimes, too, those who are even more educated find their estates into more shambles because they think that it is not necessary, all right? But we're saying overall, whether you are rich, whether you are poor, whether you are educated, uneducated, whether you have assets or basically no assets, just make a will because you never can tell. You can be the beneficiary. Somebody could go to a store, an appliance store, a furniture store, a bank. They may be having a promotion. You put your name on this form and bam, you're the winner of a house, you're the winner of $25 million or $30 million. And it forms part of your estate, right? It forms part of your estate. So,
do you find that there are, in terms of making the will, authentic, making sure it's signed before the two witnesses and so on, do you see a lot of persons coming forward to say they want to challenge the will? This is not the correct will. Somebody forged a signature. What are you seeing?
There have been a number of cases, and I do quite a number of these cases where persons are coming forward and they say that they want to challenge a will. And this is so. Sometimes there are persons who are just bad mind. Some are just greedy. Gravalicious, as we will say. And they want to challenge the will. And these are persons who don't want to work. They just want to benefit. And they have not even assisted the deceased in any way, any shape or form. But they knew that the deceased has money. They knew that the deceased has assets. They knew that the deceased has wealth. And some of them want to cash in. So they want to cash in, right? And that is why it's important that when persons are going to make
another thing I want to bring, only because of time, Mr. Williams, it might come to light that by virtue of the will, how it was written, or by virtue of intestacy, a spouse or some person benefits, but the family doesn't like them. And the family may not like them for various reasons. And other person may say, but he or she should never benefit because he wasn't a good husband or she wasn't a good wife, or the person did all sorts of things to the testator. Any comments there? Because
yes, I will make a comment. Yeah, I will make a comment very quickly. And the comment I will make quickly is that a will is all about the testator. That is the person making the will. It is all about the testator. It is not about the beneficiaries. It is all about the testator. It is what the testator wants. It is what he or she wants to do. Yeah. And so whether you like it or not, that John Brown or Mary Jane should not have benefited. It is what the testator wants. And that is what
the testator may have just failed to change their will, but that's the last will and testament that there is.
Yeah.
And when someone makes a will, Mr. Williams, when someone makes a will, how do they ensure that it's safely kept so that it can be found, retrieved pretty easily after the person demands?
Good question. I would suggest that what they do is to inform someone who they can trust, somebody who is reliable, as to where the will is. Because remember, after they die,
they're not here to tell you. Or they're here, but they're not.
Challenges, right? So they inform someone, where it is, so that it can be retrieved. And my final comment would be, I'm encouraging all persons, seek the services of an attorney to prepare your will. There's no law or rule or legislation that says that a will can be prepared by someone else, but the lawyer is trained to do it. They make it very simplistic in legal language. They create what the testator wants, and they will ensure that there are no ambiguities or inconsistencies or incongruousness, to prevent the will from being invalid. So if you're sick, you have a dental problem, you go to the dentist. You have a mechanic problem in your vehicle, you go to the mechanic. So go to the lawyer.
And an attorney as well who is, I would say, even seasoned in this particular area.
Correct.
Not all lawyers specialize in the same areas. Mr. Williams, I want to thank you for your time and for your thoughts. We're totally out of time, but very useful information. Thank you so much again. Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Visit the Love 101 FM YouTube channel and Facebook page for this and all other Love 101 FM programs. Listen to the Morning Watch on our Love 101 app and download it today and stay connected to the family station, Love 101 FM, the number 4 station in the island and the number 1 gospel station in Jamaica. This has been the Morning Watch. Have a blessed weekend. Join Reverend Dr. Dylan Toussaint next week as he looks at other popular and controversial issues. Of course, thanks to our producer, Kathy Gilland, to our guests. I am Stokeley Marshall. I get back to Love in the Morning with Chakal.
Together, we can create a safer Jamaica for our children. We need to get the guns and save our country. The time brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister is
8 a.m.